Hello friends, thank you for joining me again. So for the next several videos, I believe I will be planning to cover the Warcraft verse, in particular the lore aspect of things. This will of course include the cosmic forces, the realms, and the entities in the universe to kind of get a nice understanding of the inner workings for the later stages to come. So, with that out of the way, let's just dive right into kind of the aspects which create the Warcraft verse and the birth of the universe as a whole, and its other aspects that bind it together. So, starting off with everything, we of course start with the main Warcraft cosmology map. This includes the cosmic forces, the realms, the denizens of the universe, etc. And we will be delving into the various aspects of it now. So before all else, there was light and there was shadow. Light and shadow are the most fundamental forces in existence. Although they are like contradictory by nature, obviously, they are bound together in like equal nature and the cosmic scale, as seen, interlocked, opposite of each other. Either like really can't exist without the other, since they kind of are kind of like the yin and the yang. Pure light and shadow like dwell in a realm outside of the borders of reality, but shades of their presence are found in the physical universe, of course. And light manifests as holy magic, while void, which is known as shadow, as you could see, appears as shadow magic more often than not. Next, we approach the forces of life and death, which, if you guys have some common sense, like I know you bright minds do, they hold sway over every living thing in the physical universe. The energies of life, known commonly as natural magic within the verse, promote growth and renewal in all things. Death, in the form of necromantic magic, tongue twister, holy shit, acts as a counterbalance, basically, to life. Kind of like the shadow and light, obviously. And it is an unavoidable force that breeds despair in mortal hearts and pushes everything towards a state of total decay and eventual oblivion. And then lastly, of the big six, we cover order and disorder, which govern the cosmic systems of the physical universe. Starting with order, you can see that's good boy Sargeras. Order is most commonly perceived in reality as arcane magic, like when the time comes for it. That type of energy is innately volatile, and wielding it requires intense precision and concentration. So kind of like all the most powerful of beings. And then conversely, disorder on the other side is manifested as highly destructive fel magic. That is what most demons are kind of like fueled by. Sargeras gets wrecked by, we'll see later. This brutal and extremely destructive energy, fel, is fueled by drawing life forms from living beings. So yeah, fel doesn't play around. So starting with the elements, the four classics, as there are in many other verses, which we know and love, is like fire, earth, air, and water. These four serve as the basic building blocks of all matter in the physical universe, as shown on the cosmology map. And Shamatic cultures have long sought to live in harmony with or assert domination over the elements. So there have been feuds over the powers they hold. To do so, the shamans call upon like primordial forces of spirit and decay. Those primordial forces are the other two sources of magic within the verse. Those who seek to bring balance to the elements rely on spirit. That's sometimes referred to as the fifth element by shamans, or chi by the monks. And this life force interconnects and binds all things in existence as one. On the other side of things, decay is the tool of shamans seeking to subjugate and weaponize the elements themselves. So they're very potent. And then elemental duality. Many shamanistic cultures have discovered that the elements can influence a variety of emotional states, so they can influence emotions as well. And for that reason, mortals often associate the elements with different feelings, both in the negative and positive senses. Moving on to the Great Dark Beyond, you might wonder, why is it not on the map? Well, that is because it represents, in a sense, the entirety as the physical universe. It is basically an infinite living realm composed of an immeasurable amount of stars, like worlds and mortal civilizations. So it's kind of just like the universe as we perceive it, like space, etc. Like Azeroth, the World of Warcraft is just merely one of the countless worlds drifting through the reaches of the Great Dark Beyond. So it is massive. And then going along with that, you might wonder, hey, why is the Twisting Nether not on the map? Well, that is because it is basically an astral dimension that lies parallel with the Great Dark Beyond. So it's kind of like opposite to the void with the light. But it's still connected because the forces of the light and the void bleed together at the boundaries of the Twisting Nether. And with that, like, it engulfs this realm in the perpetual strife which formed it. And at times, the volatile magics that pervade the Twisting Nether intrude upon the physical universe as a whole, warping reality beyond measures. So it's wild. Okay, so the Emerald Dream is pretty complicated, but also pretty lit. So it's basically a huge ethereal realm of like spirits and just like pure nature that exists alongside of Azeroth. The Titan forged the Emerald Dream to act as a map for the evolutionary path of Azeroth's flora and fauna very early on. The two realms are bound as one. As life ebbs and flows across the physical world, the spiritual energies that would saturate with the Emerald Dream keep pace with it. So as it's not like restricted to time, it'll always pursue. And although tied to the physical world, the Emerald Dream is a place that most mortal minds would find alien and surreal. But some of those minds, by channeling druidic magic, can enter a state of dreaming and consciously navigate the Emerald Dream. So it's basically like the ultimate epic trip fest, which everyone would want to experience, full of like spirits and, epic nature. And once in it, their thoughts can also shape and influence portions of this spirit realm. But the imprint that these dreamers leave behind is never permanent. So you'll never make a permanent mark unless you're of a much higher power level. And lastly, in the dreamways, time and distance are completely mutable. If it kind of like functions on its own, spirits flow like living winds through lush tracts of constantly shifting primordial woodlands. What appears tangible one moment becomes intangible the next. It's like very unpredictable. And seemingly impermeable landmarks transform in the blink of an eye. So it's whack, but also pretty lit. And just get a blunt and go in there and have a fucking great time. And lastly, addressing the main realms of existence within the verse, we of course have the Shadowlands, one of the most recent DLCs for the games. They should have just fucking ended at the Rise of the Lich King. God damn it, that was like the best one. Fight me. Okay, I digress. But the Shadowlands, it's like that Emerald Dream in a sense. Like the Shadowlands are linked to the world of Azeroth permanently. Yet, whereas the Emerald Dream represents life, the Shadowlands represent complete death. They are nightmarishly realms of decay, spiritual planes teeming with the souls of the dead who have passed from the world to the living. The Lich King is a good friend to this area. The origins of the Shadowlands remain uncertain, but they have existed ever since mortal life first arose in the physical universe. So it's been there, for a long ass time. And many believe that mortal souls are drawn into this dark place at the point of death, where they remain forever after. Still others hope that their souls will go on to the brighter place, rather than languish for eternity within the cold confines of the Shadowlands. So you still can get out, but it's kind of just, a sad place of being a kind of restless soul, like ghouls. Now, starting off with the denizens of the cosmos, we can begin with quite possibly the most powerful entities within the verse, being the Voidlords. Now, before proceeding, keep in mind that the WoW creators are kind of trolls, and they made Voidlords, which are fodder in comparison. They're basically Voidwalkers with armor on. So they're like two different kinds of Voidlords. The ones that are like on Azeroth, which are trash, but then there are the Voidlords we're talking about now. So don't get them mixed up. But to continue, the big boy Voidlords are monstrous entities that are basically just composed of pure shadow energy. They kind of chill at the very bottom. They are cruel and like merciless beyond mortal comprehension and driven by insatiable hunger. They just like seek to devour all matter and energy in the physical universe. They're kind of like a bunch of Galactuses except bigger assholes. And in their natural state, the Voidlords exist outside of reality, as shown near the shadow, and only the most powerful of these entities can manifest in the physical universe, and only for a limited amount of time. To maintain their presence in reality, the Voidlords need to consume untold amounts of energy and matter. So it's like a Galactus, which is kind of an avatar that has like a ticking time bomb on it. And they're basically just like non-corporeal beings. So to best combat the Voidlords from kind of the holy side of things, there's then the Nauru, who you can maybe argue for the second most powerful entity, like series of. And they're basically a race of like living, sentient, purely energy-based beings, just based out of holy energies. And they are basically like the purest expressions of the holy light that exists in the great dark beyond. So basically all throughout space as we know it, and have vowed to bring peace and hope to all mortal civilizations in the waylay the forces of the void. So they are in conflict with the void and protect humanity. And they are known to travel through dimensions and are sworn enemies of the Burning Legion and the Voidlords. Not all Nauru are necessarily have the same motives. They have like their own personalities, their own goals. They aren't just complete assholes and kind of the same as the Voidlords doing their own stuff. Like Zera and others kind of, do their own missions. One Zera, you can see here with talking to Turalian and Illidan behind him. So yeah, they can appear, for mortal eyes. They don't have to like be restricted by time like the Voidlords. So now talking about some of the most iconic faces dealing with the mythos, you of course have the Titans and the pantheon they formed. So the Titans are basically just like colossal godlike beings composed of pure primordial matter in creation when the universe was born. And their main mission throughout much of the early mythos was to look around the great dark beyond and like cosmos, world to world, looking for slumbering world souls, because each slumbering world soul has the potential, once awakened, to become a very potent titan. That is what drew their interest with Azeroth. That was like a titan, when awakened, would be beyond compare with power. And basically, they are also very potent in arcane energies, because it can also be argued that that's their lifeblood. This was seen when they had their battle against the Black Empire. Aman'Thul was kind of stupid, and he ripped Yasharaj from Azeroth itself and caused a huge wound within the world. You could see it like its blood. It was just like a huge well of arcane, like dripping magic, known as the Well of Eternity now. So they healed it, and it got saved. But yeah, it was close. And then, of course, to wrap up the intro for the Titans, because it'll be very important to later to know who they are. Going left to right, we have Norganon, who is the keeper of celestial magics and lore. Then to the right of that is Khazagoroth, the shaper of Forger of Worlds. And then we have Golganeth, he was the lord of the skies and the roaring oceans. And then Eonar, she was the Lifebinder. And then Agramar, who's like up close on the picture. He is the lieutenant of the Great Sargeras. He's kind of like his bromance dude. They would fight together a lot. And then Aman'Thul in the very back. He's the High Father of the Pantheon. I guess kind of like a Zeus figure. And then, of course, Sargeras gets the big picture on the far right as the Great Defender, the mightiest of the Titans that are there. And then later on, we all know the Destroyer, which we will get to. On the ending note of Sargeras, I think it's appropriate we kind of brush over the Burning Legion then. So it's basically, to begin with, like just like the most destructive force in the Great Dark Beyond. And we were talking about Sargeras earlier. When he becomes fallen and he gets like, fel infused, he creates the vast demonic army to scour all creation. And he wanted to kind of end all evil so the Voidlords couldn't corrupt anything by doing this. That's obviously a shitty strategy. And the Burning Legion moves from world to world, decimating everything in its path with its fell magics. No one really knows how many worlds and civilizations the demons have annihilated throughout the Burning Crusades, which just, keep pursuing. And the demons that fill the ranks of the Burning Legion are highly resilient. Just their spirits are tethered to the Twisting Nether, mentioned earlier, which makes them extraordinarily difficult to destroy permanently. Because even if they die in the physical universe, it's just they'll like shoot back to the Twisting Nether, kind of like magnets. And because it's kind of like they're not corporeal, and then they'll just form again and just shoot out another avatar. So it's kind of just a cycle, and that's what Sargeras was facing when he was a good guy. He would just keep killing them, and then he realized he would just keep going back, and it was just like, fuck this. Next, we have the Old Gods, probably my favorite out of the entities covered. They are definitely a classic. They're physical manifestations of the void. They are nightmares incarnate, basically, just mountains of blighted flesh and withering tentacles that grow like cancers within the world of the Great Dark. They kind of like bury their way like into the worlds and, then just go full hentai on your ass. Yeah, like the gross. And then they basically, their main purpose is to serve the Voidlords in doing so. They live only to transform the worlds, as I said earlier, into places of despair and death. Their main goal is to corrupt them in order to get a corrupt Titan soul, and in return, hopefully, a corrupt Titan, who have the power to be well above any of the good Titans, including Sargeras when he was a good boy. Like he knew the potency and just sliced the world in two that was under danger. So yeah, and the Voidlords are so powerful. They just like chuck so many of these around, just like Yahtzee dice. Now, don't worry, not all gods are terrible. The wild gods are pretty chill. They're basically just primal manifestations of life and nature. They relate to the Emerald Dream, because they are creatures of two realms. They inhabit the physical world of Azeroth, as we see it, like in the forests and such. But their real spirits are bound in the Emerald Dream, so they get a permanent dope trip fest, which is nice. And many of the wild gods obviously appear in gargantuan animal forms, such as wolves, bears, tigers, or birds. And the 10 that are notable are Asina the Wisp, Agamagan the Boar, Ashaman the Cat, Aviana the Lady Raven, Goldrin the Wolf, Malorn the Stag, Omen the Hound, Tortola the Turtle, it's one of my favorites, Ursoc the Mighty Bear, and then kind of the counterpart, Ursul the Wise Bear. And they're all pretty chill. Next, you have the elemental spirits. They're primitive and chaotic beings of either fire, earth, air, and water. We briefly went over the elements earlier. There's some of the earliest sentient creatures to inhabit worlds in the waking universe. And the elemental spirits appear in almost an infinite variety of shapes and sizes, which that makes sense. They can kind of form to their will. And each of these creatures has a distinct personality and temperament, traits that heavily influenced by a spirit's elemental nature. There was a little graph I showed, not a kind of graph, like chart, with the elementals earlier that has like their traits. And then the presence of the fifth element, spirit, is also affected with elemental beings. A world with an overabundance of spirit may give rise to native elements whose are passive and lack physicality. And always remember that the elemental spirits are governed by the big daddies, the elemental lords, which usually 4 of them. Either in this case, the main ones, Neptulon, Ragnaros, Thurazan, or Alakir. And lastly, to wrap this all up, we just have the Undead, which are former mortals who have died and become trapped between life and death. These tragic beings derive power from the necromantic energies that pervade the universe, and most undead are driven by vengeance and hatred to destroy the one thing they said they can never have again, which is life. These could be like ghosts, ghouls, and the Scourge of the Lich King is a good example. Whew. Okay, well, glad you stuck around. If you did, I thank you. Hope you learned something about the cosmology, because we'll be needing it to proceed on to the mythos and like the Black Empire, primordial, the good stuff that comes along with it. So yeah, thank you for watching. I'm gonna chill in the Emerald Dream for a bit. I'm gonna make another vid, and have a good weekend.